The world is going to change whether you like it or not. Your job will change. Your relationships will change. The skills that made you successful yesterday will become useless tomorrow. Most people break under this pressure. They cling to what was. They resist what is. And they get crushed by what's coming. But there was a man who turned change itself into his greatest weapon. Bruce Lee wasn't just a martial artist. He was a philosopher who understood something most people never grasp. Rigidity is death, flexibility is life, and the person who masters change becomes impossible to defeat. Today, I'm going to show you Bruce Lee's secret to becoming unbreakable in a world that never stops shifting. But be warned. This requires you to let go of everything you think you know. Subscribe and comment what change you're currently struggling with. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Rigid Man. His name was Derek. 41 years old, senior accountant at a firm he'd worked at for 15 years. Derek was excellent at his job, meticulous, reliable. He knew every process, every shortcut, every unwritten rule. His expertise was his identity. Then the firm implemented new software. Everything Derek knew became irrelevant overnight. The processes he'd mastered for 15 years were now obsolete. Younger employees adapted within weeks. Derek struggled for months. His manager pulled him aside. "Derek, you need to evolve or you'll be left behind." The words burned because they were true. But Derek didn't know how to evolve. His entire career was built on mastering one way of doing things. Now that way was gone. At home, things weren't better. His teenage son had become a stranger. The parenting approaches that worked when the boy was 10 now created walls. His marriage had grown stale. The same conversations, the same routines, the same distance growing wider each year. Derek's response to every problem was the same. Push harder, work longer, force things to be the way they were. But the harder he pushed, the more everything resisted. He was fighting reality itself, and reality was winning. One night, his son was watching an old Bruce Lee interview on his laptop. Derek walked past, barely glancing at the screen. Then he heard something that stopped him cold. A voice said, "Be like water making its way through cracks. Do not be assertive, but adjust to the object, and you shall find a way around or through it." Derek stood frozen. For the first time in months, something made sense. Chapter 2. The Water Philosophy. Bruce Lee revolutionized martial arts by rejecting martial arts. Every traditional system said, "This is the only way," Bruce Lee said. "There is no way." He studied every fighting style, took what worked, discarded what didn't, and created something formless. Called it Jeet Kune Do, the way of no way. But his philosophy extended far beyond combat. Bruce Lee understood that life itself was constant change, and the person who clings to fixed forms will always be defeated by the person who flows. His most famous teaching was devastatingly simple. Empty your cup. If you come to learning, already full of opinions, already certain you know the right way, nothing new can enter. You must become empty to become full. You must unlearn to relearn. Bruce Lee said that the stiffest tree is most easily cracked, while bamboo survives by bending with the wind. This wasn't poetry. This was strategy. The rigid break. The flexible endure. Derek began to understand his problem. He had spent 15 years filling his cup with one way of doing things. Now that way was obsolete, but his cup was still full. There was no room for anything new because he was still clutching the old. Bruce Lee wrote that all fixed set patterns are incapable of adaptability or pliability. The moment you subscribe to one approach and treat it as the only truth, you become predictable, defeatable, breakable. Derek had been treating his expertise like a fortress. Fortresses can't move. And in a world that constantly shifts, what cannot move gets left behind. Chapter 3. The Emptying. Derek started small. Instead of resisting the new software, he approached it like a complete beginner. He asked younger colleagues for help. His ego screamed that this was humiliating. He did it anyway. Something strange happened. When he stopped pretending to know, he actually started learning. The new system wasn't his enemy. Its attachment to the old system was. Week 2, he applied the same principle at home. Instead of lecturing his son, he asked questions. Instead of asserting his way, he listened. The first conversation was awkward. The fifth was actually meaningful. His son said something he hadn't heard in years. "Thanks for understanding, Dad." Derek wasn't becoming someone else. He was becoming fluid. Bruce Lee's teaching echoed in his mind. Be formless, shapeless like water. When you put water in a cup, it becomes the cup. When you put water in a bottle, it becomes the bottle. Water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend. Month 3, Derek volunteered to lead the software transition for his department. The same change that nearly broke him became his opportunity. His manager was shocked. The same man who couldn't adapt was now teaching others to adapt. Chapter 4. The Unbreakable Flow. 1 year later, Derek had been promoted. Not because he was the smartest or the most experienced, because he had become the most adaptable. While others complained about changes, Derek flowed with them. While others broke against new challenges, Derek bent and reformed. His colleague asked him the question that mattered most. How did you transform so completely? You were the most rigid person I knew. Derek smiled. I stopped trying to be a rock. I became water instead. Rocks look strong, but water eventually breaks every rock. Not through force, through persistence and adaptation. This is Bruce Lee's gift to the world. Not fighting techniques. A philosophy for surviving anything. The understanding that strength isn't about being unmovable. It's about being unstoppable. And the only way to be unstoppable is to flow with whatever comes. Your job will change. Your relationships will change. Your health, your circumstances, your entire world will shift beneath your feet. You cannot control this. You can only control your response. You can be the tree that stands rigid and cracks in the storm. Or you can be the water that finds its way around every obstacle, through every crack, over every barrier. The choice is yours. But remember what Bruce Lee said. Notice that the stiffest tree is most easily cracked, while the bamboo or willow survives by bending with the wind. So here's my question. What are you clinging to that's making you breakable? What fixed pattern is keeping you stuck? What would happen if you emptied your cup? Comment below. Subscribe if this transformed your thinking. Be water, my friend. Nothing will ever break you again.